The narrative begins in the year 1480 in Romania, where we meet Prince Vlad, who lives happily beside his wife named Elizabetha. As proof of love, Vlad presents Elizabetha with a small music box, a delicate symbol of the bond between the two. At a certain moment, the couple's tranquility is interrupted when knights arrive and take Vlad by force, for his presence is needed on the battlefield. The country is at war, and with the enemy advancing, Vlad orders his men to take Elizabetha to another castle where she can remain safe. Before leaving, Vlad receives a blessing from the Pope and asks for divine protection for his wife. Meanwhile, in the forest, Elizabetha is escorted to the new destination. Unfortunately, an enemy soldier is hidden among the trees and quickly brings down two guards with precise arrows. The other guards prepare to fight while making Elizabetha ride ahead on horseback. Outside the forest, Vlad breaks several barrels of oil to start a fire that creates a line of flames intended to prevent the advance of the enemy army. A fierce battle begins, and soon soldiers on both sides are dying everywhere. However, Vlad's army has a clear advantage. With great skill and cooperation, his men fight intensely until they win the combat. Shortly afterward, Vlad and his soldiers appear before the enemy king, displaying the heads of their adversaries impaled on spears. The moment is interrupted when Vlad receives news of the attack against his wife and immediately leaves to look for her. Meanwhile, Elizabetha rides as fast as possible while enemy soldiers pursue her. The region is known as the Forest of Wolves, and thousands of bear traps are hidden beneath the snow. Two soldiers are captured by these traps while Elizabetha manages to avoid them skillfully. However, unfortunately, her horse also becomes trapped and she falls to the ground, allowing the enemies to surround her while they carefully test the terrain with their swords. Elizabetha tries to move away, but she also steps on a trap. When Vlad arrives at the place, his horse is also brought down by a trap. He continues on foot and soon faces two enemy soldiers, bringing them down quickly. Vlad throws his sword to kill the man approaching Elizabetha, but the blade accidentally strikes Elizabetha. Crying, Vlad holds Elizabetha in his arms as she dies. Sometime later, Vlad visits the Pope again and furiously protests against God for not having protected his wife, even having killed many in the name of God. Vlad demands that Elizabetha be returned and asks for a miracle that the Pope cannot grant. Taken by fury, Vlad kills the Pope with a crucifix and declares that he will no longer follow God, while Elizabetha does not return. Suddenly, the wind begins to blow violently inside the church, and the statue of Jesus begins to cry blood. But Vlad shows pride in the face of what happened, not caring about any curse that may fall upon him. His men, terrified, need to drag him out of the church. 400 years later, in France, a priest visits a psychiatric clinic to speak with Dr. Diant, who claims to have an extremely delicate case that worries even the Queen of England. The two walk through the corridors of the clinic, where dozens of disturbed patients behave chaotically, while doctors drag them with brutality. Finally, they cross a heavy steel door that leads to a tunnel toward a sealed room where Maria is kept chained. Maria is an Italian woman who is engaged to the great-grandnephew of the Queen, and as she opposed a wedding in the church, the ceremony took place on the family property. However, the groom brought a bishop to bless the union, and the mere sight of him caused a hysterical attack in Maria. Records indicate that Maria was born in the year 1759, something impossible, as it would mean that she would be around 130 years old. Her inexplicable age and her violent reaction to religious symbols raise suspicions that she is a creature of evil. While the men discuss the case, Maria awakens and snarls at them. The priest approaches and notices her sharp fangs. He then concludes that she is a vampire. He explains that she is the first captured alive, and that vampires can go out during the day, but cannot withstand direct sunlight. To prove it, he opens the window and the sunlight immediately burns her skin. When the priest raises a crucifix before her, the object begins to catch fire. Then he cuts the finger of Diant's assistant, Simon, and lets a few drops of blood fall into Maria's mouth to make her cooperate. The priest examines her neck and finds bite marks that transformed her into a vampire. He explains that the church has fought vampires for centuries, but has still not found the first of them. Desperate for blood, Maria reveals that the first vampire is her master, a prince who will soon come to the city to look for his princess. Meanwhile, the notary Jonathan crosses a forest during the night. The coachman stops the carriage and says he cannot continue because the wolves will soon appear, leaving Jonathan alone with his luggage, a torch and a crucifix. Jonathan continues the journey on foot, keeping the wolves away with the torch until finally arriving at a great castle. Upon crossing the gate, it closes automatically behind him. Another door opens by itself, allowing Jonathan to enter a hall where a figure appears on the balcony and disappears with a lightning strike. Suddenly, an old man appears behind him. The man extinguishes the torch, lights the lamps, and introduces himself as Prince Vlad, also known as Count Dracula. The two sit at the table, and Jonathan eats enthusiastically the meal served, while Dracula does not touch any food. With a simple gesture of his hand, Dracula makes a plate slide across the table toward Jonathan, who believes it to be only a curious trick. While searching for documents in his bag, Jonathan becomes distracted and Dracula kills a rat with a fork, crushing it with his hands to collect the blood in a goblet and drink it. Jonathan explains that the county he represents wishes to buy an ancient abbey in Paris belonging to Dracula to transform it into a hospital. While organizing papers, Jonathan drops the crucifix. Dracula asks if he believes in God, and Jonathan replies that he does not, explaining that the crucifix was given by the coachman. With another gesture of his hand, Dracula throws the crucifix into the fire and surprises Jonathan by appearing beside him, saying that it is time to sleep. Jonathan is led to his chambers, and Dracula asks him not to leave the room during the night. Then he returns to the dining room, plays music, and orders a gargoyle to watch the visitor. In the room, Jonathan finds a book that tells the history of the castle. A drawing shows young Vlad, but the portrait of the prince has disappeared from the pages. Meanwhile, the priest visits Henry, Maria's fiancé, and states that Maria is physically healthy, but the evil still needs to be removed from her. Then the priest investigates Maria's belongings and finds the missing page of the book with the portrait of Elizabethia. During the night, Jonathan leaves the room and wanders through the castle until he notices a light behind a door. He descends frightening stairs that lead to a luxurious underground cellar. In the center of the room there is an ancient coffin. When opening it, Jonathan finds Dracula sleeping. The Count states that Jonathan should not have left the room, and suddenly, a gargoyle strikes him, leaving him unconscious. Upon awakening, Jonathan is chained by the gargoyles, hanging upside down. Dracula cuts his face so that the blood drips into a bowl. When Jonathan asks how God could create such a creature, Dracula laughs in a disturbing way and asks what his last wish is. Jonathan wishes to hear Dracula's story, and the Count finds the idea amusing enough to order the gargoyles to release him. Dracula then begins to tell his story while recalling Elizabeta's funeral. He explains that he spent all those centuries waiting for her because he believes that pure souls can reincarnate. The search was not easy. During the Black Plague, half of the female population died, and the other half gathered in sacred places where he was not welcome. The loneliness became so great that Dracula began to envy humans for being able to die. One day he fell asleep over Elizabeta's tomb. When he awoke the next morning, he was taken by such despair that he tried to end his own life by jumping from a window. Even so, he survived the fall. Dracula continued trying repeatedly, but each time he survived. Unable to search for Elizabeta throughout the entire world, he decided to create a plan to attract her to him. For more than a century, he developed a perfume using rare and magical flowers from famous gardens. When he tested the perfume in Italy, women immediately began to follow him. The fragrance was so powerful that he could control crowds at parties, making everyone dance in perfect synchrony. At a ball in Versailles, Dracula believed he had found Elizabeta, but the woman was not her. The mistake made him cry and realized that he had spent years among parties, alcohol, and lust without finding true love. He then decided to stop searching and make others search for her. In the middle of a party, Dracula began to bite all the women present, transforming them into vampires, including Maria. After that, he returned to Elizabeta's tomb and opened the coffin, discovering that only her ashes remained. The sight led him to an emotional collapse, and he decided never to leave the castle again. The gargoyles began to bring riches and serve him while his vampiresses continued the search. In the present, Jonathan states that he understands such a strong love, as he is also engaged. In his locket there is a photograph of his fiancée Mina. Dracula observes the image and becomes emotional upon realizing that the woman is the reincarnation of Elizabetha. In gratitude for having reunited him with his love, Dracula decides to spare Jonathan's life. He summons his gargoyles and orders them to bring much blood, because he needs to recover his beauty before meeting Elizabetha again. In Paris, the priest shows Dumont the portrait found, and states that they need to locate a woman resembling it to capture Dracula. He reads a passage from a book explaining that God may deny death to someone who commits blasphemy, but may also forgive when there is true repentance, removing the curse. This means that if Dracula dies, all the vampires he created will return to being human. At that moment, Simon enters the office and recognizes the woman from the portrait among the clinic's visitors. Dumont and the priest run to the room and find Mina, who explains that she is a close friend of Maria. The two met at a party, and since then, Maria would not leave her side. Maria was always kind until the wedding, when she lost control upon seeing the bishop. Mina admits having doubts about her own marriage, as she feels she does not belong to this era. At the abbey, Dracula appears disguised as a beggar, and the nuns allow him to stay. However, as soon as he enters the chapel, he abandons the disguise and spreads his perfume over an image of Jesus, making all the nuns run to the place. Dominated by desire, they kneel and desperately approach Dracula, seeking his attention. Without hesitation, he begins to feed on them. In the castle, Jonathan takes advantage of a moment alone to throw a blanket over some tools and pull them toward himself, breaking his chains. When a gargoyle enters the room, it finds Jonathan trying to escape through the window. The creature cuts the blanket to drop him, but Jonathan manages to cling to the wall. The gargoyles try to reach him through holes in the wall without success, until one of them uses a hook to make him fall. Jonathan rolls across the snow and his body stops over a frozen lake. When a gargoyle tries to follow him, the ice breaks and the creature drowns, preventing the others from reaching him. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Jonathan moves away despite the fear. Sometime later, Dracula arrives at the psychiatric clinic, appearing younger and healthier. Using the perfume, he controls Simon and makes him take him to Maria. Maria reveals that she has found Elizabetha and is rewarded when she receives permission to feed on Simon. The next morning, the priest conducts research and finds an image of Vlad. Later, he is called to the clinic where Dumont reveals that Maria has disappeared and Simon has turned into a vampire, being tied to the bed. The priest notices Simon's fangs and smells the strong perfume on his clothes. Upon hearing the description of the intruder who took Maria, he realizes that Mina is in danger. Meanwhile, Mina opens the door upon hearing knocks and is surprised to see Maria apparently healthy, saying that she was discharged from the clinic. Maria explains that a friend wishes to meet her and makes Mina wear more elegant clothes. The two go to a hotel where Dracula awaits them. Upon seeing his wife's face again, Dracula begins to cry. After praising Mina, he kisses her hand and causes her to have a vision of the past. Uncomfortable, Mina steps away and leaves with Maria to enjoy the festival. Dracula follows the two as they enjoy food-drink games, a fake mermaid show, and small animals. In a haunted house, the two separate and Mina gets lost. Frightened by a fake skeleton, she screams, and Dracula immediately appears to guide her out. At a shooting booth, he teaches Mina to shoot, and as he embraces her, she has another vision of the past. Later, Dracula invites the two to rest in his hotel room while they wait for the fireworks. Mina talks with Dracula, and he shows the small music box. Upon hearing the melody, Mina feels familiarity and begins to have visions of Elizabeth. Frightened, she accuses Dracula of casting a spell. Dracula tries to explain his story and the hope of finding her reincarnated, but Mina insists she is only Mina. He ends the conversation by gifting her the music box. Afterward, Maria takes Mina to watch the fireworks. At the end of the night, Dracula accompanies Mina to her house, leaving her happy. However, the smile disappears upon finding the priest and Dumont caring for a sick Jonathan in the living room. The priest explains what happened, but Mina refuses to believe that Dracula is cruel. The priest then reveals that Dracula is a vampire who feeds on human blood and uses perfume to control victims. He examines Mina's neck and feels relieved upon finding no bite marks. Mina runs to the bedroom crying and opens the music box. Elizabetha's visions return until Dracula appears beside her. Mina asks him to go away and Dracula tries to leave through the window. Not knowing his powers, Mina believes he intends to kill himself and stops him. Then she begins accusing him of deceiving her. Dracula assures that he never used perfume on her and throws the flask into the fire. Mina mentions the fact that he drinks blood and Dracula admits it, but promises that she will never be his victim. Mina's nose begins to bleed and Dracula collects the blood with his fingers and tastes it. He holds her hand and declares feelings while the visions return. Upon hearing the last words spoken by Vlad to Elizabetha, Mina accepts the memories and calls Dracula her love before kissing him. The two surrender to desire, and Mina asks for immortality. Dracula then bites her to transform her. At that moment, the priest smells the same perfume detected at the hospital and realizes that Dracula is in the house. He grabs a weapon and runs to Mina's bedroom, finding it empty. The priest and Dumont conclude that Dracula took Mina to his castle, and Jonathan agrees to guide them there. Meanwhile, Maria reunites with Henry and shows affection to distract him. When she tries to bite him, the priest's group appears. Maria roars furiously and prepares to attack. Then the priest shoots her. Maria quickly recovers and knocks down Henry before capturing the priest trying to kill him. Jonathan finds a sword on the wall and decapitates Maria. The head flies, knocking down Diant while the body still tries to strangle the priest before falling. As it still moves, the priest uses a crucifix to pierce Maria's heart and kill her definitively. In Romania, servants carry a coffin into the castle. Dracula and Mina come out of it, and he shows the castle to her. After meeting the gargoyles, Mina plays the music box and wears Elizabetha's dress. At the castle gate, the priest's group arrives with soldiers. They wait for the servants to leave and invade, keeping the gate open. A soldier fires at the door while cannons fire from the forest, destroying parts of the castle. Dracula asks Mina to remain in the room while he fights, but Mina becomes terrified by the shots that destroy the ceiling. The gargoyles face the soldiers, knocking down several of them. However, the human army is much larger and continues advancing until it dominates the castle. Jonathan leads his allies to the cellar, while soldiers search the upper floors. Mina sees the soldiers arriving and locks the door. In the cellar, soldiers fire at the coffin. Suddenly, Dracula appears behind Jonathan, calling him ungrateful and leaves him unconscious. Then he fights the soldiers with a sword, moving quickly and cutting down each of them. More soldiers arrive, but Dracula kills them as well. Henry takes advantage of the distraction and fires 2 pistols at Dracula, but nothing happens. The vampire leaps on him and bites his neck. With a single gesture, Dracula closes the door, preventing more soldiers from entering, and keeps the priest under the point of the sword. The priest declares that God never wanted Vlad to kill for him because God does not wish to see his creation destroyed. When people kill, they do so for themselves. The priest states that he was sent by God to save Dracula, but the count responds that his only salvation is Mina. The priest says that Dracula will be her downfall. Upon hearing Mina scream, Dracula runs to help her and asks the gargoyles to buy time. While they fight in the corridor, Dracula eliminates all nearby soldiers. Then he bursts into the room and embraces Mina. The priest tries to follow him, but Dracula locks the door. The priest reminds him that if he truly loves his wife, he must do what is right. Ignoring Mina's pleas, Dracula leaves the room and locks her inside. Leaning against the door, he hears the priest pray before piercing his heart with a stake. In the next scene, we see Mina dragging Dracula into the room, and she shares her last words of love before he turns into ashes before her eyes. All the lights of the castle go out, and the gargoyles return to being human children. Jonathan finds Mina crying while the ashes fly through the air and realizes that he lost his love. The narrative ends outside the castle, where Dracula's ashes spread with the wind, implying that he may have found a possible redemption for his sins.